Hello there, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Portsmouth Harbour on the south coast of the United Kingdom. A beautiful scene, absolutely stunning weather today. Blue skies, wispy clouds you can see. The Gosport ferry making that eternal round trip between Portsmouth and Gosport. But we're not here to see the Gosport ferry today. Oh no, we are here to see an unusual visitor. Not all that unusual, but not one you see that often in a year. And what we'll do now is head in towards the naval dockyard, past the first grey ship you'll see, which is RFA Argus, moored much closer to us. But then if we go past the stone, honey-coloured stone building, on the right of that we see a silhouette with smoke coming up from it, and that is the ship that we're here to see live today leave Portsmouth Harbour, the USS Bulkeley. She came in a few days ago, and I was speaking to some of the locals up here who've gathered, and many of the ship's crew were out on the town in Portsmouth last night, some of them gathering in some of the traditional sailors' pubs near the historic dockyard, and they were all having a wonderful time with their run ashore in Portsmouth. But what is the ship doing here? That's the first thing to bear in mind. Well, what we've learnt is that she's been in these waters for some considerable amount of time, but in recent days there have been many reports about what she's been doing and how she's stepping up a NATO deployment, and has indeed added to that. And we've nothing official, but various publications are reporting what she's been doing, and Stars and Stripes, which is the US military daily newspaper, has said that the destroyer has been involved in Baltic Sentry, and that is the first deployment of a US ship to that mission. They quote an unidentified Defence Department official speaking on Tuesday, speaking off the record, that the ship USS Bulkeley has indeed taken part in Baltic Sentry. Previously, the only US involvement in that, as I understand it, was a US Navy P-8 Poseidon patrol and reconnaissance plane deployed to Baltic Sentry. But very interesting to see that step up. Now, NATO, as you probably remember, formed Baltic Sentry in January following a rash of telecommunication cable cuttings and pipeline disruptions thought to be sabotage. And the mission is mainly comprised of the Baltic countries, including Germany and Finland. So it's a real message to be sent to Russia, of course, if this destroyer has been involved. It gives a massive capability uplift, being able to simultaneously track and neutralise multiple aerial targets in conjunction with that PA Poseidon. And it's a visible sign, I think you probably agree, of Allied solidarity. So that explanation is basically to say that the ship is in Portsmouth, having been part of this NATO mission to deter Russian aggression, the cutting of undersea communications cables, the flying of drones, which we've seen increasingly uplift in that area over recent days and weeks. So that's why the ship has now come into Portsmouth for a port stay and is now on her way again. And any second, we hope that the ship will push away from the Princess Royal Jetty. Two tugs will be aiding her in that, the SD Tempest and the tug Independent. They will turn the ship round through 180 degrees, and then she will come straight out towards us, past us here at the mouth of the harbour, and head out into the Solent and out beyond the nav tower and away. If you're just joining us, welcome along to BFBS Forces News on our YouTube channels and Facebook. It's Tim Cooper with you this morning, live in Portsmouth, where we're bringing you these live pictures currently of a Whitelink ferry manoeuvring into harbour. But in a few minutes' time we will see the USS Bulkeley begin her journey. Let's tell you a little bit more about the ship herself, or itself. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and we'll get onto them in a minute because their capabilities are quite immense. They really are a Swiss Army knife destroyer, capable right across the various domains. But they are 509 feet 6 inches in length, beam of 59 feet and a draft of 31 feet. Their top speed's in excess of 30 knots, and they've got a range of 440 nautical miles, which is 8,100 kilometres. How many people are on board? Well, there are 33 commissioned officers, 38 chief petty officers, and 210 enlisted personnel. And there are a lot of these ships in operation. more than 70 currently in operation, with another 20 or so, 20 plus, planned to be built. It's the longest standing fighting ship in the American Navy's history to be in production, and it has really proved itself an asset around the world. Well, still no movement from the ship yet, as far as I can see from this distance, but hopefully any moment now we might see something. Would be good if we could. But certainly the weather is set fair today for movements in and out of Portsmouth Harbour. Tide's gone pretty slack at the moment. Let's have a look round and just identify where we are to give you a sense of the harbour and all that we see here. So we'll zoom out from the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Once again you'll see RFA Argus on the left of your picture, and we'll come back further and further. And if we come right the way out and into the middle of the harbour, you'll see a typical scene here today of a pleasure craft. That one is on its way, the white one is on its way to the Royal Navy Submarine Museum, which is in Gosport, and you can get that launched to take you from there to and fro across the harbour, which is good. The other one is a part of the Portsmouth fishing fleet, a lovely yellow small trawler there. So this is Portsmouth Harbour, a vast expanse of water. On the left of the picture is Gosport and Haslar Marina, and if we continue round further to the left, directly in front of where we're standing at the moment is what's known as Fort Blockhouse. It's an ancient building, not in the best of condition, some parts of it at the moment, but it varies from sort of 1960s construction right through to sort of Victorian stuff. But on the far left hand side of it, the side facing out towards the Solent, you can see its much earlier origins, a really ancient fortification there that mirrors where we're standing, which is the round tower, the other side of Portsmouth Harbour's entrance, which has been here since Tudor times, a defensive pair of emplacements to try and protect the entrance to Portsmouth Harbour. So that's what we're seeing on that side. The boat I so proudly proclaimed was heading to the Royal Navy Submarine Museum isn't, but is in fact going out of the harbour. So there's a lot of people on there who must have a Solent tour booked today, which will be great fun. Weather today, plenty of breeze, but it's coming from a southerly direction and we're pretty sheltered here. If you go further around it will be pretty bumpy, but compared to the last couple of days it is an awful lot better than we've seen. Very windy down here, nothing of course to what was seen further up the country. So that's there. Right in the far distance, far, far, far away, you'll see two of the old Type 23 frigates who are now in the reserve seat, right in the far distance, waiting for disposal. And further around we go, and we're back once more at the naval base. So that's a little panoramic tour of Gosport and Portsmouth Harbour. Let's talk a little bit about the Arleigh Burke destroyers as we await for this one. Maybe it needs a jump start. Let's hope it's going to move very soon. Still no movement that I can discern at this stage. 10 past 12, so 9 minutes ago was the time she was scheduled to come away, push off from that jetty, but as yet no movement. I always look behind at Portsdown Hill, which is the hill behind the ship, and if you see the mast start to inch along that horizon, that skyline, that gives you a clear indication if there is movement or not. But we're not seeing anything. Mark Hearn has got the long lens on it, and we're not seeing a single bit of movement there as yet. So let's talk Arleigh Burke. And they're amongst the largest destroyers ever built in the United Kingdom. As I say, well over 500 feet. There have been some bigger ones though. The Kidd class and the Spruance class were 563 feet, and the Zumwalt classes 600 feet or longer. We'll talk about Zumwalt later perhaps if we get the chance. They have not been a success. The Arleigh Burke was designed with a new large waterplane area hull form, and that's characterised by wide flaring bow, which significantly improves seakeeping ability and permits high speed in high sea states. The class's design incorporates stealth techniques, so it's got an angled rather than a traditionally vertical surfaces all over it, and a raked tripod mainmast, which make the ship more difficult to read. Now the weapon systems on board the Arleigh Burke class are its real absolute tour de force, its strong point. They're multi-mission ships, as I said earlier, Swiss Army knife destroyer. And the good news is this one is living up to its multi-purpose function and being functional and moving now, which is absolutely excellent. So we can see the ship coming away from the Princess Royal Jetty. But let's continue to talk about what makes this such a powerful weapon in the armoury of the United States and indeed NATO. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers are capable of anti-aircraft missiles, launching those, land attack missiles, ship-to-ship missiles and anti-submarine warfare, ASW systems. And it does that in a very special way by using a Mark 41 VLS vertical launching system. They're like little cells, almost think beehive, little cells in a beehive. And there are 90 on the earlier Arleigh Burke-class, the Flight 1 and Flight 2. This is a Flight 2A, so slightly upgraded, and that has 96 cells, which is incredibly useful. Much more heavily armed than many preceding guided missile cruiser classes. Now, controlling all of this weaponry and attack capability is the Aegis combat system, and that combines information from the ship's sensors to display a coherent image of the battle space and guide weapons to targets using advanced tracking and fire control. So think of it like this: a very, very advanced supercomputer system controlling the missile assets, controlling the picture, the scenes and tracking and visual options available to the ship, collating all of this and enabling multiple targets to be attacked, and as we've talked about, targets in multiple domains as well, not domains but different places within the battle space, so anti-aircraft, land, ship and so on. So that's why this ship is so incredibly capable. Great to see this vessel now moving away from the jetty, the USS Bulkeley, laid down back in 1999 and launched in June 2000, commissioned 8th of December 2001. And the motto of the ship, well, let me tell you, it is Freedom's Torch. Freedom's Torch. There we go. She's just coming out now from behind those 4 large tower structures, and then will again disappear from view behind the RFA Argus for a few minutes' time. This is BFBS Forces News. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Live stream from Portsmouth Harbour, bringing you an unusual ship leaving, an American ship leaving, which has recently, according to reports, been part of an important NATO mission and the first American naval activity in that mission, and that's according to sources quoted widely in the press. You may just be able to see the first of the tugs coming out from the shadow of RFA Argus. If you've watched these broadcasts before, when we've been looking at Royal Navy aircraft carriers, Queen Elizabeth class carriers come out, you'll understand that there's a bit of jeopardy, a bit of time jeopardy, certainly for us broadcasting, when they turn the ship, because the carrier is an absolutely vast vessel. This is still a very big destroyer, but it's nowhere near the size of HMS Queen Elizabeth or HMS Prince of Wales, and there have been times when we've been covering those ships leaving port that there's been a bit of a hold up in the turning process. Once I saw one of the ships turn one way and then turn back again, then move back towards the jetty, come out again and turn again, and finally come out, and it took forever. I would almost run out of things to say. Not quite, but almost. But this looks a lot more straightforward. In fact, the pace is pretty quick there already. The Bulkeley is emerged from the big shadow of RFA Argus, and that is good news, because it means all is going pretty well. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ship is stern on currently. So if she is, she will go through that 180-degree turn. which will happen when there's a little bit more leeway between her and the jetty, which should be happening very, very soon indeed. Again, if you've watched us look at aircraft carriers leave port, you'll notice that the port shuts. That's because the carrier is so very wide and so very big, it needs all the water it can get to safely transit the harbour entrance. That's not going to be the case today with this ship. This ship will leave the harbour just like any normal ship. Everyday traffic will go on around and all should be well. So no disruption at all today, as far as I understand it, from the USS Bulkeley leaving port. They're not uncommon, these ships, as I say, more than 70 of them in existence, and you do see them from time to time here in Portsmouth and indeed in Plymouth. And I think the last one in Portsmouth a little earlier this year was the USS Winston S. Churchill, which a lot of people came down to have a look at. They're very, very interesting ships to go on. I was lucky enough to go on one of these down in Devonport a number of years ago. Very different feel to a Royal Navy ship, and I don't actually know how to put that into words. It just felt not like our ships. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, it just felt different, and why would it not, because it is a different nation and things are done in different ways. The turn is already well underway, just coming up to the 90-degree point now, so she's pretty much flat side onto us, or will be very shortly. Yep, that 90-degree achieved. The tug at the front of the ship is the SD Tempest, and she's the super tug of the tug fleet down here in Portsmouth, specifically built to facilitate carrier operations, but obviously used for more routine missions like this one. Super powerful tug. And there we have. And we're just going to break off from this to show you a little fly past that we're going to have happening, which is just behind us. Mark will spin round. Oops. Someone just fell over, it's not going well. But just coming into the harbour, coming in from the South Sea direction, is a Royal Air Force Chinook helicopter. We saw one, or I saw one earlier on, flying around, but here is the Chinook, probably here to say goodbye to the ship. Beautiful sight that. Chinook heading back over the Hampshire hills. There's a light aircraft just above it that looked a little bit terrified by what was going on and just made a series of dramatic manoeuvres, but I think all should be well now. So there we go, a lovely Chinook salute to a NATO ally. That helicopter excuse me, that helicopter will now more than likely be on its way back to Royal Air Force Odium in the north of Hampshire, where the Chinook force is based. Or who knows, it might have other things it has to do whilst in the sky, but it's certainly heading off in the direction of Odium now. Back to the ship, ship spotters, and here we see the tug bringing her right round now. It's going to be fascinating today to see what the sort of display is like as they leave. I had a chat with a colleague of mine at BFBS Forces News earlier, and he said he expects there to be very few crew visible. And also, when Royal Navy ships, you often don't get all the crew visible, but sometimes they do Procedure Alpha when coming back from deployment or leaving to go on deployment. But I'm not expecting that today, and from what I can see from this vast distance, I think there will be perhaps a few crew members, a few ship's company. In fact, I think there are ship's company on the side there at the front, and if it is, it'll be really nice to see them close up when they get closer to us. Yes, and I gather there, yes, we can just see those there spacing equally alongside the front of the ship. So the turning is almost complete. Once it is fully complete, the tug will go back to to be directly in front of the bow of the ship and begin to escort and aid the vessel out of the harbour. Please send in your comments. Only nice ones though, please. We always like to read them, and let us know where you're watching this ride around the world, whether you're on deployment or based overseas with the British Armed Forces, or indeed if you're just watching from anywhere around the world, as we send these pictures to you live on BFBS Forces News YouTube channel and Facebook channel. Incidentally, let me tell you a little bit about BFBS Forces News. We are the British Forces Broadcasting Service, and we bring you all the news there is about the British military, our NATO allies, our adversaries, and we do that in various forms. We have a wonderful website, we have video programs going out overseas for personnel serving there and their families, and in this country loads of social media channels. The YouTube channel is a great place for longer form content, and we also have wonderful social media channels where you can find out loads of interesting stuff about the military. So look out for those on TikTok, on Instagram, Facebook of course, and I always forget one. There's always one at this point I forget. What have I forgotten? Oh, I've done YouTube. No, that's the Bebo, MySpace, who knows. But no, look for us all over. We are there, and there's loads of good things to see us on. Twitter, that was the one I thought. X, there we go. I think I'd blocked it out of my mind. So, that part of the mission is complete. Bows facing towards us. And this bit, you'll be pleased to know perhaps, happens relatively quickly. Tug will pick up speed, as will the ship, and very, very soon, in the next 5 minutes or so, the ship will probably be just a few yards in front of us, and then we'll pass us here at the round tower and head out into the Solent. She's going on the standard journey that all vessels make, or the majority of military vessels make when they leave here, which is heading out past the forts that are in the Solent, and then further along, wheeling round a thing called the Nab Tower, which you can see on the far distance, right off the coast of the Isle of Wight. If you've ever been on a cross-channel ferry, you see it quite close up when they come back in, and then from there, tugs will go, and she'll be off on her mission. So if you're just joining us, let me just explain to you what we're doing. We are looking here in Portsmouth at the USS Bulkeley, leaving Portsmouth Harbour after a brief visit. It's reported she's been part of NATO's Baltic Sentry, which is an operation taking place in the Baltic seascape, and it's really designed to tackle the threats against our undersea communications cables and things like that, and increasingly now focusing on drone incursions into northern European countries. It's reported that USS Bulkeley is the first American naval asset to take part in Baltic Sentry, and was aided by a US Navy P-8 Poseidon patrol and reconnaissance plane. Definitely an uplift in capability, because the destroyer is capable of simultaneously tracking and neutralising multiple aerial targets in conjunction with the P-8. And chair of the Maritime Strategy Programme at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, is quoted as saying, "It's putting Russia on notice to stay out of NATO airspace. If successful," he said, "this should deter further Russian mischief." So there we go. Yeah, nice speed being made now. And it really does make all the difference. Beautiful, beautiful weather today. So things to watch out for as she comes alongside are, we'll see how many crew there are and how they're looking. Let's also look out for the condition of the ship, because this ship has been in and around northern waters for some considerable time now, and very often when you see these ships, they are really quite considerably rusty because they've been doing so much work. So let's take a look out for that. Also, the panels on the side that are angled in a sort of stealth way. It'd be good to see a good view of those too. and that big towering mast, which is so central to the look of the Arleigh Burke-class. It's amazing to think there are 70 odd of these in the world, with more to come. So there we go, SD Tempest leading the way, pulling the ship. The Independent, I think, is the other tug's name, at the rear, keeping everything in order. And a nice clear harbour for the vessel to make its way out. Very different look about the ship to anything we have in the UK. It's hard to, doesn't look like a Type 45, but the little bridge windows there remind me of a Type 23, ever so slightly. Helicopter carrier as well, I think capable of carrying 2 helicopters on board. But it really is that array of weaponry and the silos, the pods of the varying types of missile, all controlled by that very integrated system, which is the key point of this vessel. It is a floating arsenal, and its armoury can work on land, sea, and high, high into the sky. A couple of little ribs out. Very often you will get police launches just keeping an eye, and that may well be one of those out today. But a lot of a lighter touch than with the carrier, because it is a much smaller vessel, a much more routine transit. Although it's always a challenge when you are working with a partner nation, because they will do things differently. So there's always a bit of interest, I would imagine, amongst the tug crews and the dockyard workers as to how they will work alongside the Americans. With that big mast and those big, almost like scaffolding pieces coming out either side, it doesn't look a lot older than its years. Reminiscent of something from the Second World War, 50s even, 60s maybe, but not like our ships. You can see the sensors there, 4 sensors on top of the bridge, and then sensor panels as well. And a few members of the ship's company, as predicted, are indeed going to be there for us to see as they go past. But looking beautiful in the sunlight today. USS Bulkeley, 84 written just behind where the anchor comes out on her bow. Not a uniform grey at all, several patches of different colour grey where repairs have been done. Notably just above the waterline on the bow there you can see there's a big patch of different colour, and further down the ship you will see a lot of rust. As I mentioned earlier, these often come in and out of port and looking a bit sorry for themselves, but that's because of the amount of work that they've been doing, and this ship has been in and around the waters of Northern Europe for some considerable time now, and does display a little bit of rust there. And the ship company, well, about maybe a dozen or so standing there, hard hats on rather than any sort of beret. And let's just enjoy the moment as the ship comes close and leaves Portsmouth Harbour. Definitely a bit excuse me, definitely a bit careworn there alongside. Back of the ship though, more American sailors lined up. People here at the Round Tower in Portsmouth are waving their hardest, but they're not getting any response. Maybe they're not allowed to. Maybe that isn't how they do things. Plenty of smoke billowing around us. And there, right at the stern, you can see the word Bulkeley, although the B seems to have been taken off there. Ken Vaughan has sent a message saying, great coverage, thanks very much indeed for sharing this. Rob Jeffrey is in Worthing, West Sussex, watching this. And John Paul Leifson is in Iceland. Thank you very much indeed, John, for joining us all the way from Iceland. Good stuff, great to know so many of you are watching there on our streams. Gosh, there really is an awful lot of smoke and it's getting in the lungs here a bit, but I think that's probably a good point to leave this coverage. Tim Cooper here with you in Portsmouth. Mark's been filming the pictures, and as the smoke billows across us at the Round Tower, the ship heads into the sun and away into the Solent and the sea. From us all here in Portsmouth, thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.